individuals who own pistol braces, which were originally approved by the ATF themselves.
There's a hearing that you can't be at, your counsel can't be present, you haven't been charged with the crime.
Which changes now we have an administration that is desperate to erode our Second Amendment rights.
Under any administration would become an ally. It needs to go. We need to abolish.
And said he supports a ban on the sale of assault weapons, which there's no such thing.
But now there is a right to possess a handgun outside the home.
Biden's Armed Violence Initiative. President Biden's announcement of a new Office for Armed Violence Prevention underscores the administration's commitment to addressing the persistent issue of armed violence in the United States. While legislative progress on armed reform remains stymied in Congress, the creation of this office aims to coordinate efforts to curb armed violence and elevate the importance of the issue, particularly among Democratic activists and young voters. Vice President Harris will assume oversight of the newly established office, with Stephanie Feldman, the White House staff secretary, directing its operations. The formal announcement, set to take place at the White House, signifies a strategic move by the Biden administration to confront armed violence through a coordinated and focused approach. The initiative responds to long-standing calls from armed control activists for a dedicated office to address the complexities of armed violence. Against the backdrop of limited prospects for additional armed reform legislation, the new White House office signals a proactive step towards finding alternative avenues to enhance armed safety measures. The hope among activists is that President Biden will leverage his presidential platform to advocate for and enact meaningful actions to address the pervasive issue of armed violence. Stephanie Feldman, in discussing the purpose of the office, emphasized its commitment to dig deep to find additional life-saving actions. The objective is to coordinate support for communities directly impacted by armed violence, addressing the multifaceted challenges faced by these communities. The concept is rooted in the belief that a dedicated White House team focused on armed violence prevention can bring sustained attention to the issue. The hope is that this team will work on a daily basis to address complexities of armed violence and propose impactful solutions. Poe Murray, chair of the Newtown Action Alliance, emphasizes the urgent nature of the issue, labeling it a national crisis.
There's a hearing that you can't be at, your counsel can't be present, you haven't been charged with the crime.
The ATF before they abolish our Second Amendment rights. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms
makes it less likely for people to shoot things they are not aiming at.
Individuals who own pistol braces, which were originally approved by the ATF themselves.
And every conservative in this Congress to stand with Representative Clyde and his legislation, and to stand with me.
The Newtown Action Alliance, formed in response to the 2012 mass slaying at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, underscores the deep impact of such incidents on communities. Murray argues that public opinion supports President Biden's stance, citing a recent NPR-PBS NewsHour Marist poll where a majority of Americans prioritize curbing armed violence over protecting armed rights. Murray suggests that the president recognizes the political and moral high ground associated with addressing armed violence. The creation of this new office aligns with the administration's acknowledgement of the issue's resonance among the American public. By focusing on armed violence prevention, the Biden administration seeks to address not only the legislative challenges but also the broader societal impact of armed violence. Overall, the establishment of the new arm for armed violence prevention reflects President Biden's commitment to tackling a critical issue in American society. As hopes for comprehensive armed reform legislation face obstacles in Congress, this strategic move aims to centralize efforts, elevate the importance of armed violence prevention, and utilize presidential platform to advocate for meaningful actions. The inclusion of experienced activists in the new office signals an intention to bring diverse perspectives and expertise to the forefront of the administration's approach. The urgency and gravity of addressing armed violence as a national crisis are evident, and the administration seeks to leverage public opinion and its moral and political standing to effect change. President Biden's announcement. President Biden's announcement of the establishment of the White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention signifies a crucial step in the administration's commitment to addressing the pervasive issue of armed violence in the United States. The office is poised to play a central role in implementing expanding upon both executive and legislative actions aimed at curbing armed violence and saving lives. Vice President Harris will take on the responsibility of overseeing the newly created Office of Armed Violence Prevention, a role that aligns with her active involvement in the Biden-Harris administration's efforts to combat the armed violence epidemic in the nation. Stephanie Feldman, a seasoned policy advisor with a long-standing focus on armed violence prevention, has been appointed as the director of the office. The administration has also enlisted the expertise of armed violence prevention advocates Greg Jackson and Rob Wilcox, who will serve as deputy directors, bringing their passion and dedication to the forefront of the administration's initiatives. President Biden's statement highlights the emotional gravity that often accompanies discussions of armed violence. He recalls meeting with families impacted by armed violence and hearing a consistent plea from them: do something. The president emphasizes the need for further action, acknowledging that while steps have been taken in the form of legislative initiatives such as the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and executive actions, more comprehensive measures are required to address the gravity of the issue. The creation of the White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention underscores the administration's commitment to building upon existing measures and advancing new strategies to ensure the safety of Americans. The office will serve as a hub for coordinating efforts, bringing together experienced individuals who have dedicated their careers to advocating for change in the realm of armed violence prevention. Stephanie Feldman, in her role as director, stands out as a trusted aide to President Biden for over a decade, showcasing her commitment to the cause. The inclusion of leading experts Greg Jackson and Rob Wilcox adds depth to the office's capabilities as they bring personal experiences and profound understanding of the tragedy of armed violence to their roles. Their dedication to transforming personal pain into purpose aligns with the overarching goal of the administration to effect meaningful change. President Biden's acknowledgement that these steps, though significant, are just the initial strides toward the comprehensive action needed reflects a pragmatic approach to address the multifaceted challenge of armed violence. The establishment of the White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention is framed as a response to the collective call for action from communities impacted by armed violence, creating a dedicated space to continue the important work of advancing armed safety measures. However, in the absence of swift legislation action, the administration remains dedicated to leveraging the resources of the newly established office to combat the epidemic of armed violence. President Biden's statement underscores the frustration with the lack of progress on legislative measures and the need for immediate, impactful actions to address the crisis. The call for universal background checks and bans on attack arms and high-capacity mags reflects popular sentiment among Americans who prioritize stricter arm control measures. The president's acknowledgement of the absence of sorely needed congressional action positions the new White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention as a proactive step to fill the void and take tangible steps to curb armed violence.
Let's see what is the most compelling thing to learn from that case. How many times was this gentleman?
Which changes now we have an administration that is desperate to erode our Second Amendment rights.
They don't care about that fundamental liberty law-abiding citizens in this country enjoy.
Under any administration, would become an ally. It needs to go. We need to abolish.
The impulsive leaders at ATF have once again failed to apply simple logic and reason to their decision-making.
And now the ATF, under the guidance of this administration, is coming to take away.
Vice President Harris echoed the administration's commitment to addressing armed violence as an urgent issue that demands decisive leadership. Emphasizing the fundamental need for safety in realizing true freedom, the Vice President conveyed the administration's dedication to implementing measures to reduce violence within the constraints of existing laws. The Vice President highlighted the critical role of the new office in engaging various stakeholders, including congressional leaders, state and local officials, and advocates, to collaborate and build upon the progress made in saving lives. The promise made by the administration is clear. They will not cease their efforts to end the epidemic of armed violence that plagues communities across the country. The urgency in Vice President Harris's statement reflects the profound impact of armed violence on American lives and communities, emphasizing that every person, child, and family deserves the opportunity to live free from the fear and trauma caused by armed violence. The establishment of the White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention is positioned as a key component in the administration's multifaceted approach to combating armed violence. While legislative measures are actively advocated for, the administration recognizes the need for immediate, impactful actions that can be taken without the existing framework of laws. The engagement of congressional leaders, state and local officials, and advocates is crucial in building a collaborative effort to address the root causes of armed violence and implement effective solutions. The administration's commitment to saving lives is evident in both President Biden and Vice President Harris's statement. The acknowledgement that time is of the essence underscores the gravity of the issue and the imperative to act swiftly and comprehensively. By creating a dedicated office and deploying the expertise of individuals committed to armed violence prevention, the administration aims to make meaningful strides in ensuring safety of American communities. Ammunition Restrictions Proposal. The recent revelation of a joint effort by 20 states submitting a letter to President Biden and his newly established Office of Armed Violence Prevention has sparked concern among arm owners across the nation. The letter, requesting an investigation into and potential restrictions on the sale of certain ammunition, specifically 5.56 rifle ammunition, has ignited a debate on the potential impact of such actions on civilian arm ownership. The crew of the matter lies in the express support of these 20 states for a ban on the sale of what they categorize as the most common rifle ammunition, 5.56, to civilians. This move has raised red flags and garnered attention from arm owners, as it signifies a collective effort to curtail access to a widely used ammunition type. The targeted ammunition in question is linked to Lake City ammunition, and the letter alleges that billions of rounds of military-grade ammunition produced at the Lake City Army Ammunition Plant have found their way into the commercial market. The concern expressed by these states revolves around the use of this ammunition in various tragic incidents, including those in Uvalde, Parkland, and Buffalo. The letter calls for an investigation into the contracting processes that allowed this situation to unfold and urges the new executive agency to take action to prevent military-grade ammunition from reaching civilian hands. What adds complexity to this situation is the creation of the new White House Office of Armed Violence Prevention by the Biden administration.
I think worse than that, sir, you will see millions of otherwise law-abiding citizens.
So basically it's saying if there hasn't been something like this done in all of our history, then it can't be imposed, right?
And it has one magazine. So after 30 rounds, I'm done.
Shall not be infringed.
And said he supports a ban on the sale of assault weapons, which there's no such thing.
I love this rug. I love the color blue. That's the one thing I knew I wanted. The rest my brother picked out for me.
They emphasize the need for restrictions and assert that even if deemed appropriate for civilian markets, the sale of this ammunition should not be subsidized by taxpayer dollars. The implications for arm owners are substantial. The request for an investigation and potential actions by the new executive agency raises concerns about the government's ability to influence and limit access to certain types of ammunition. The states are essentially asking for constraints on manufacturers like Lake City, arguing that their military contract should come with a commitment to refrain from selling similar ammunition to civilians. The potential armization of the new executive agency for arm control purposes is a source of anxiety among arm owners. The letter hints at leveraging the agency's powers to investigate manufacturing practices, potentially leading to restrictions on ammunition sales. This move aligns with the broader goal of preventing what the states term as military-grade or military-subsidized ammunition from reaching civilian hands. In the short term, the states are seeking an investigation into contracting and manufacturing practices, with a public report and recommendations to curtail the diversion of military ammunition into civilian markets. In the long term, they are urging the White House to ensure that future production contracts explicitly prohibit the sale of military arms and ammunition to civilians. The concerns stemming from this letter highlight a potential shift in government approach toward ammunition regulation and access. As arm owners anxiously await developments, the outcome could shape the landscape of ammunition sales and impact individual rights in the realm of arm ownership. The interplay between state initiatives, federal agencies, and the new executive office creates a complex web of considerations, raising questions about the balance between public safety concerns and individual Second Amendment rights. Concerns rise over ammunition. The recent development involving 20 states and their attorneys general submitting a letter to President Biden's new Office of Armed Violence Prevention raises significant concerns about potential restrictions on the sale of certain ammunition. The creation of this new executive agency, as discussed in a previous video, was already a cause for apprehension, as it was expected to coordinate with other agencies like the ATF, DOJ, and FBI to implement armed violence prevention measures, which in essence could translate to increased arm control efforts. The focus of the letter from the 20 states is particularly alarming, as it proposes an investigation by the new agency into the sale and manufacture of ammunition, with a specific emphasis on targeting certain types of ammunition. This indicates a potential shift in strategy, where instead of directly targeting arms or accessories like mags, the emphasis might now be on restricting or even banning the sale of ammunition. The letter suggests a possible avenue for the new agency to exert influence over ammunition manufacturers and potentially impose restrictions on their ability to sell to civilians. The concern is amplified by the suggestion that these actions could be a precursor to broader laws and regulations introduced at both the federal and state levels. If the investigation targets ammunition manufacturers, it could result in new restrictions or limitations on the types of ammunition available for civilian purchase. This could potentially impact prices and availability, especially considering the historical trend of increased demand and prices during election years. While the proposed investigation is currently just a letter, it's reasonable to expect that the new executive agency will take it seriously and conduct an inquiry. This could lead to concrete proposals and potential actions against ammunition manufacturers.
But now there is a right to possess a handgun outside the home.
There's a hearing that you can't be at, your counsel can't be present, you haven't been charged with the crime.
There are many areas, as you might imagine, especially when you're dealing with firearms, where we just don't know.
Unfortunately, this is the only magazine that came with the gun, and it wasn't long after I had it.
Take all of the guns from all of the people. That's their goal.
Now, you could argue, actually, that the pistol brace makes the gun safer.
The ambiguity surrounding the agency's powers and the broad scope of the letter raise questions about the potential impact on the arms community. The implications extend beyond immediate concerns about the ammunition availability and pricing. The focus on ammunition sales could indicate a strategic shift in the approach to arm control. Rather than directly targeting arms or accessories, the emphasis may now be on disrupting the ammunition supply chain, making it more challenging or costly for manufacturers to sell to civilians. This could in turn impact the overall landscape of arm ownership and use. It's crucial to stay informed about these developments, as they have the potential to shape the future of arm control measures in the United States. While it's not necessarily a call to panic buy ammunition, it underscores the importance of vigilance and advocacy for Second Amendment rights. As the situation evolves, more information will likely emerge, shedding light on the intention and actions of the new executive agency and the potential consequences for ammunition sales and arm owners. Overall, the letter from 20 states to the new Office of Armed Violence Prevention raises concerns about potential restrictions on the sale of certain ammunition. The focus on investigating and potentially limiting the activities of ammunition manufacturers, particularly regarding 5.56 ammunition, signals a possible shift in strategy toward ammunition control. This development, coupled with the broad powers of the new executive agency, has implications for the arms community, including potential impacts on pricing and availability. Staying informed and engaged in the ongoing discussions about Second Amendment rights is essential as the situation unfolds. Public response and reaction. The public response and reaction to the recent developments involving 20 states submitting a letter to President Biden's new Office of Armed Violence Prevention reflect a mix of concern, apprehension, and a renewed focus on Second Amendment rights. As news of the proposed investigation into the sale and manufacture of certain ammunition, particularly 5.56 ammunition circulated, individuals within the arms community and beyond have been quick to express their thoughts and reactions. One notable aspect of the public response is a heightened sense of concern about potential restrictions on ammunition sales. The focus on ammunition, as opposed to arms or accessories, suggests a strategic shift in the approach to arm control. Many individuals within the arms community are expressing apprehension about the implications this could have on their ability to purchase and use ammunition, especially for arms commonly associated with military-style rifles. The broader context of the new executive agency, with its vaguely defined powers, adds an element of uncertainty that further contributes to public concerns. Questions about the extent of the agency's authority and its potential impact on ammunition manufacturers, as well as the broader arms industry, are fueling discussions and debates within the community. On social media platforms and online forums, individuals are actively sharing information, analyzing the potential consequences, and engaging in conversations about the Second Amendment. The proposed investigation has become a focal point for discussions on the balance between public safety and individual rights. Some are expressing skepticism about the stated motivations behind the investigation, questioning the link between specific types of ammunition and tragic incidents. The public reaction also highlights a renewed emphasis on advocacy for Second Amendment rights.
Contrast that with what Republicans did to address gun violence and crime the last time they were in charge.
There's a hearing that you can't be at, your counsel can't be present, you haven't been charged with the crime.
And call on young people to continue leading efforts to end gun violence.
Tearing apart families and making our streets less safe.
There is no other right where we require individuals to show a need in order to be able to exercise that right.
On Inauguration Day, the outgoing president has to be out by, I think, noon or 10 o'clock in the morning.
The concern over potential restrictions on ammunition sales is prompting individuals to re-evaluate the importance of being actively involved in supporting and defending their rights. Calls to stay informed, engage with lawmakers, and support organizations dedicated to protecting Second Amendment rights are gaining traction within the arms community. The timing of these developments in the midst of an election year also adds a political dimension to the public response. Some individuals are interpreting the proposed investigation as a potential tool for certain political agendas, leading to discussions about the role of arm control in election cycles. As the situation unfolds, the public response is likely to evolve, with ongoing discussions, debates, and advocacy efforts shaping the narrative. It is clear that the proposed investigation into the ammunition sales has struck a chord within the arms community, prompting individuals to actively participate in the broader conversation about the future of arm control measures in the United States. In conclusion, the public response and reaction to the proposed investigation into ammunition sales are characterized by a mix of concern, apprehension, and renewed emphasis on Second Amendment rights. the focus on ammunition, the vaguely defined powers of the new executive agency, and the broader political context have sparked discussions and debates within the arms community. As individuals express their thoughts and engage in advocacy efforts, the public response continues to shape the narrative around the potential impact of these developments on the rights of arm owners. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.